For those who are new to continuing education, I don't think anybody is, but we have a lot of other programs other than Go Learn. We have the youth program if you have some grandchildren or children that you want to send to us. But we cater pretty much like everyone, I think the saying is like from 5 to 105 or something like that. So in that age range, you can totally sign up with courses with us. From youth camp that are really exciting in the summer, so that's where I park my kid, and to professional education if you want to work on some of your work skills, program management and other things, all the way to more or less the fun stuff. You can do some welding with us, or origami, or I don't know, maybe sushi making at some point, but also of course to tickle our intellectual mind when you're 50 years and older, we have the OSHA Lifelong Learning Program, which is a really cool endowment program for everybody who is 50 and better. Well, thanks for joining us. For those who are new to Go Learn, we're trying to do, we're the University of Utah's travel program, but instead of saying, hey, let's go on a cruise and jump on this and everybody wears red and let's be a part of that, we actually kind of like reinvented this a little bit and said, okay, we have all these experts on campus. For us, it's Mimi here with Japan and Cuba, who in her case work for the School of Architecture and is a professor there, and even more, the chair just recently removed from that, so she has more time and can do this trip for us again. And she's smiling and doesn't have as much responsibilities resting on her shoulders. But we want the departments to shine, we want the professors to shine, to 20 of lucky travelers. In your case, I think we're 22 or so. So it's a full trip for Go Learn. But we wanted to take tourism just a notch higher when it comes to our learning. I mean, travel is always learning, but there are sad lessons in travel, like, oh shoot, I should have made a copy of my passport, now it's gone. Or there are good lessons, like in our case, where we learn a lot about the culture firsthand from our tour professor, but also the architecture, so she gets to shine, Japan gets to shine. We want also as travelers to shine to Japan. So we're different kind of travelers. I know people went to Cuba with us, and I think the Cuban people, I just returned, and they're really thankful for seeing 20 Americans coming and really wanting to learn about their culture. So you're giving back to the place that you're going to, in this case, Japan as well. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart to join us. And without further ado, we do have some packages, but I'm going to hand over the word to Mimi really briefly. I think we want to do a little intro, go through the packages really quick, and then focus on answers and questions for our trip. For those, there are some people here who might be in the Japan class after 7 o'clock. So we hopefully wrap this up just before around 7 o'clock, so that we
maybe 6:45.
6:45, so you can head over to the class that you're currently enjoying, the Japanese language class for travelers, I think it is. So thank you, Mimi. Hello.
Thanks, Christoph.
And
hi.
It's all yours.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Mimi Locker. This is Kuma Murakami. He's my partner in our architecture firm, which is called Tajika Architecture, and partner in life, and my porter, which is a joke that we'll tell you about sometime. We do a lot of traveling, and we spend a lot of time traveling around Asia. Every country, I'm telling the joke now, every country we go to, they think he's from that country. And so when we were in Nepal, and we were going to do a hike from Pokhara, they came up to me and they said, oh, do you need a porter? Oh, you already have one. Kuma's the porter. But Kuma's also an architect. I'm trained as an architect. And once I finished my graduate work, I moved to Japan and I worked for a Japanese architecture firm for 7 years. So that was not my first introduction to Japan, but that was where I really got to know the culture and fell in love with the country. We worked in the same office in Tokyo. The whole office was about half the size of this room, and it was 2-3 rooms. It was very tiny and packed and efficient, as all things in Japan are, but working there was a fantastic experience for me. So as I continued on with my career, I've kept that relationship with Japan, and my research is based in Japan. I do research on Japanese architecture, predominantly traditional architecture on Japanese gardens, and in particular one Japanese garden designer who's a Zen priest, contemporary, living in Yokohama, and he designs Zen gardens all over the world. So I had a lot of fun going and visiting his gardens in Hong Kong and Singapore and Berlin and New York, and writing about them. So that's a little bit about me. I'm originally from Pennsylvania, so I can't claim to be a Utahn, but I've lived here for 15 years. I've been teaching full-time for 20 years, but working as an architect along with that. Kuma's originally from Kumamoto, which is where the nickname Kuma comes from. His real name is Takayuki Murakami, but nobody knows that.
It's okay. I know.
And Kuma in Japanese means bear. So it's a nice nickname. Mimi in Japanese means ear. But it is also a female name in Japan, so I'm okay, I'm safe. So I'd like to get to know a little bit about all of you, if you don't mind. I thought what we would do is just go around the table, have you introduce yourselves. Maybe if you've done a trip with Go Learn before, you could say which trip you went on. If you've been to Japan before, I'd love to know that. If it's your first time, I would love to know that. I'm also very interested to know what it is about Japan that interests you. I'm going to start with Jody because I know her and I can put her on the spot.
Yeah.
And Jody's second time going to Japan.
Yes, so I went on the inaugural trip
You
to
did.
Japan. with
This is
Mimi
the
and
fourth
Kuma
Go Learn trip to Japan.
in 2015, I think it was.
2012 maybe?
Oh my gosh, was it that? Okay.
2013?
13.
2013. 13 is right.
15, 17, 20.
Okay, 2013. So I'm the Associate Dean for Continuing Education. I was previously the Marketing and Communications Director for Continuing Ed. I've been with Continuing Ed for 10 years. But I've worked in the past for nonprofit travel, mostly humanitarian travel, so I am very interested in travel, but that was my first trip to Japan, and this will be my second trip to Japan. And I love Japan. My son, who's 11, is obsessed with it, so I figure after this time I'll have enough knowledge that I'll be able to take him and feel confident that I don't need Mimi and Kuma to guide us around, hopefully. It's an amazing trip. I'm so looking forward to this different version of it.
It's very different than the one first one. And Jody's a great traveler, and she's a lot of fun, so.
And I know the most important word.
Do you remember it?
Sumimasen. Yes. Sumimasen.
Great.
Yep.
Hi.
Hi, my name's Carol Hansen, and I'm retired.
Congratulations.
It's lovely. I've always loved to travel, and I spent a large portion of my career working overseas in Asia and the Middle East, and I've always wanted to go to Japan. The first class I ever took in college was history of Far East Asian art.
Wow.
And I am really excited to learn more about the architecture and all the arts and crafts and cultural side of Japan. I'm really excited.
Great. Welcome.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Janelle Vanderwerf, and I attempted to go on Go Learn with Christoph to Spain, but it didn't work out for me. I'm originally from Illinois, and I graduated from UW-Madison, so from the Midwest, but I've been out here 16 years. And anyway, I was in journalism and mass communication, and I was flight attendant for a while, and I did base manager for flight crews when I was young. And so I've traveled a bit, but I've never been to Asia. And so I'm really, really excited to go to Asia, and I thought Japan is a good, maybe jumping off point. I don't know, people have told me it's not necessarily, I don't know. We'll see.
All countries in Asia are different, so,
Yeah, so
they're all
I'm
good
really
jumping off
excited about
points.
that. And so I've gone back to school to do interior design. And I love gardening and landscape architecture and interior design, so I'm really excited to learn this from you guys. And I have to explain that I just had eye surgery on Monday, so everything's a little black and blue. I don't want you guys to think I'm injured or beaten or anything. I'm fine. So I'm excited.
Great. Look up the Japanese interior design firm called Super Potato.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I did some work wrote a book about Super Potato.
Okay.
We are going to a restaurant designed by Super Potato. Yes, we are.
I've read the itinerary very
Yes,
closely.
we are. Hi.
Hi, I'm Karen Edgley. I moved to Utah 18 years ago. My husband Roger is also coming on this trip, but he's not here tonight. And I studied Asian studies and Japanese in university,
Oh,
so
great.
that was, and lived in Japan at that time. So that was many years ago now. And to see whether my brain was still working, I'm now enrolled in intermediate Japanese
Fantastic.
here, and every lesson I remember more, but it's digging it out like from the recesses of my
Oh,
brain.
great.
So,
Great. Where did you live when you were in Japan?
I was an exchange student.
Huh?
So first, when I went there, they lived in Ichikawa City, which is sort of near Narita,
Oh,
that
yeah.
direction, and then they moved to downtown Tokyo in Hakusan, near where the Todai University is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Great.
And then they moved to Kamakura.
Oh, wow.
So
Three
I've
very
lived with them
different places.
all places, yes.
Wow.
So I would love to go back and visit them.
Great.
How exciting. Well, I'm Mary Gilchrist, and we've done a few trips with Go Learn. All of them have been wonderful. I have been very interested in Japan because this is, in my minor worldview, like one of the biggest countries I ever wanted to go to as a child. I can remember, this sounds absolutely crazy, but having China sets and things made in China and things made in Japan. And it was, you know, as a little kid in 1950s to 60s, it was just like one of those places you can't even visualize. I'm still a little bit that way now that I've retired. I think the vision is going south, but I am so excited to be on this trip, and no matter what is there, it will be such an experience because it is so new to me. And so I'm truly a novice on this trip, and I'm so thankful you're leading it.
Well, we love novices and experts, so
Yes,
we're glad to have the
it'll
whole
be
range.
wonderful.
Yeah, great.
I'm Bob Gilchrist, the other half, going on this trip because Christoph talked it up so much, and as soon as it came on, we signed up like the next day. And like, it was on a
You're the
week
first on the list,
from his
actually.
promo.
You're
Yeah.
the top of the list.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so we're excited to go. We've been to China, but not to Japan. I'm excited to be really good, and you've heard nothing but great things from other people, not just him.
Well, thank you, thank
Yeah,
you.
so excited.
I think it'll be fun for you to compare China and Japan.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be very interesting. Hi, Erica.
Hi, I'm Erica Vector, and this is going to be my third trip to Japan with Mimi and Kuma, and
Erica and Alan
Alan.
tie for both trips.
Wonderful. So my husband Alan is not here today, but he should make it to the next meeting. And we're big fans of Mimi and Kuma, and feel that he gets such an incredible guiding and exposure to the culture and the country. And why do I like Japan? I don't know. It's just, what is there not to like, from technology to the old ways and architecture and food and people, and you get to see all of that through totally different lens with Mimi and Kuma. And my advice to you, just bring really comfy shoes.
Yes.
Because you're gonna see the world while you walk, and it's the best way to really see the world. And we can't wait. We are so thankful. We're add-ons, right? Did I say it right? Okay, add-ons.
We had a cancellation.
We did.
So we had a cancellation, and thank you so much for accommodating us, and I'm so excited. I'm gonna start crying right now. I was a little worried because of all this coronavirus, and the first question I asked Mimi in the parking lot, are we going? What's going on?
Yeah.
So we're going. I'm very excited, and can't wait to learn about a different part of Japan that we've never been to.
you know, the things that we experienced on the trips with Mimi and Kuma, like the island of Naoshima, I still even just remember as I do my dishes and the glimpses through my mind what we've been able to see. And you know, Kuma, he is, will never forget. I've never been on a trip where there's such attention to every detail. When Kuma just ran out somewhere out of the bus and comes back with the wasabi root and passes it on to everybody on a bus so people can see what is that green stuff that we eat, you know, comes from. It's really things like that that
Yeah,
makes
he
it.
ran down to the river, he pulled it out, washed it.
So it's gonna be special.
Thank you, Erica. We're gonna hire you as our agent.
Yeah, I can be
Yeah.
aware. Just I don't know about these fancy groups and fans, you know, that follow the women and. But I feel like that's what I am to Mimi and
We have a groupie.
Exactly.
Thank you.
So I'm Nancy Lombardo, and I work here at the Eccles Health Sciences Library. I'm a librarian. And I did go on the Go Learn trip to China 2 years ago with Wendy Zhao, and had a great time on that trip. So I'm looking forward to another Go Learn trip, and I'm interested in the culture and just being in Japan. I've read quite a few of Murakami's books. Is he your brother?
Unfortunately, Murakami's a pretty common name.
Yeah.
We'll actually see some work by the artist Takashi Murakami. So for art historians, he's a contemporary artist, and the style that he works in is called super flat. And but we'll see some of his work. His name is the same name as Kuma's father. And we have a joke about that because Kuma's father's a farmer, right? So there's the farmer and the artist. Yes, great.
Hi, my name's John Nellist, and my wife Karen and I have travelled a lot, but this is our first trip with Go Learn. I retired from the international division of IBM about 18 months ago, so in my business career I did about 15 trips to Japan all told, it's about that. But it was all to the big corporate cities, Tokyo, Hiroshima, Kobe. I loved going out there every time, but I'm looking forward to seeing something different rather than just the business side of Japan, and the culture and the history and some of the gardens, architecture and that side.
Great.
And my pursuit and interest is photography. So that's what I'll be doing a lot.
So
through the
we'll
trip.
be keeping an eye on you to make sure that we bring you along with us.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, he has been warned.
Great.
So I'm Karen, John's wife, and I actually grew up in Asia. I grew up in the Philippines. My father worked for the Asian Development Bank, and he traveled extensively through Asia. So we as a family traveled extensively everywhere else. So I have been to Japan twice with John. Well, I met him after his business, and once with my family in the 1970s. So I'm also interested in seeing different places besides Osaka, Tokyo, and Kyoto.
Yeah, great. And there have been a few changes since the 70s.
Yeah.
I'm sure you saw it.
The toilets are great. Yeah. Best toilets in Asia.
Ones with remote control.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Jeff Kramer. I have been on one Go Learn trip before to Greece. I think it was 3 years ago. It was a wonderful experience. Had a really nice time. Janet, my wife, and I went. We love to travel. I have not been to Japan. She's not been to Japan. I think everything about the country is of interest to me. The culture, which is so special from what I've read. The architecture, the food, just kind of everything. And really, it's a country that, although we travel a lot, and I'm generally comfortable traveling on my own, I would never feel comfortable traveling to Japan because I know nothing about the language. Obviously can't read it. I can't read it. I don't understand it. And it would be very intimidating for me to try to travel in a country like Japan on my own. So I'm really thrilled to be going with folks like you. Looking forward to learning a lot, and I'm excited to be a part of the trip. I'm also, have a hobby, photography.
Ah,
So,
perfect.
That's what I wondered, are you guys hooked
We're
in?
friends.
That's how I met John.
That's how we know.
You're snug.
That's how we know.
Okay, it's a snug deal.
We know.
Got it.
We
We'll be
know.
looking out for them when we're all on the bus.
Exactly.
And missing two people.
As long as you share your pictures, none of us will be
Yes,
worried.
Jody's on it.
That's why I'm the caboose. I'm very nice about it, but I will be, I have to be letting you know.
Very good timing for
Hope you'll share your photos with us.
Oh, of course.
Yes.
I'm Janet, this will be my third honeymoon trip. I'm due from Cuba. And what sold me on this trip was the architecture and the gardens. I'm at Abbey Garden and I love Japanese gardens. Every time you go to a city, even if it's in Canada or United States, if they have a Japanese garden, you go there.
And there's some pretty good ones.
So, excited to go.
Great. So while the packets are being passed around, I just want to go through a few slides and then we'll move on to the information in the packet. First of all, welcome, yokoso, as they say in Japanese. I added a few haiku here and there, and I think maybe we'll have to take some time while we're traveling to write some haiku while we're trying to find our photographers. So we can get in the mindset now. But this Matsuo Basho, Basho is the family name, and in Japanese typically you say the family name first and then the given name. And I'll try to remember to do that, but I often forget when I'm in an English-speaking audience and I mix it up. But I'll try to keep that straight. But Matsuo Basho is a very famous writer of haiku, among other things. And I think this was a really nice one to get us in the mood to think about this trip. A lovely spring night suddenly vanished while we viewed cherry blossoms. I'm a big fan of haiku, and I actually often ask my architecture students to design based on the principles of haiku, because haiku are short, which means that you have to be very careful in the elements that you choose. Haiku always have a connection to nature, and they always have a surprise. So in this case, the surprise is the night suddenly vanishing while they're viewing the cherry blossoms. So haiku for me are a lot of fun. I don't write them very well, but I enjoy reading them. And so I like to throw haiku in my presentations here and there. And I also put a lot of cherry blossoms in this one because I was having fun with it. But I want to talk to you about hanami, which is cherry blossom viewing. Literally, hana means flower. Mi, in this case, comes from the verb miru, to see or to view. So put together means flower viewing. The idea of it becoming the meaning of cherry blossom viewing specifically came a little bit later. So cherry blossoms in Japan now are considered maybe the most beautiful moment in time during the whole 4 seasons. But originally it was plum blossoms that got the attention. And this is because in China, and much of Japanese culture originated in China and came to Japan and then was changed over time in Japan, fully adopted, and then we often say adopt, adapt, adapt. So Japan adopted many things from China, and then in later years from other countries like the United States and from Europe as well, adopts those ideas, becomes very adept at using them, so much so that they then become, what did I say, adopt, adapt? Adept, I put adept out, okay, adopt, then they adapt them, and then they become so adept at them that they become their own thing. So in the case of the cherry blossom viewing, it started with plum blossoms in about the 6th, 7th century, as Buddhism came into Japan from China through the Korean peninsula. Buddhism was brought into Japan as a whole. So it was Chinese Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism, that was brought in. Buddhism over time changed throughout Asia, and in Japan, of course, as well. And it slightly shifted to be more a part of the Japanese lifestyle. And by about the 8th, 9th century, we start to see a shift to different types of different schools of thought in Buddhism in Japan in particular, but we also then see the culture shifting, and one of those cultural shifts was moving from plum blossoms being kind of the ultimate beauty to cherry blossoms being the ultimate beauty. And so the word hanami, which had meant flower viewing and probably more toward plum blossoms, now is associated primarily with cherry blossoms. So we will be doing a lot of hanami on our trip, and we planned the trip for this time of year, which normally I can't do because I'm teaching this time of year, but since I'm on sabbatical, it worked out fine, lucky us, right? And we also planned it that we'll start south and move north because fingers crossed, somewhere we are going to see cherry blossoms. Now, we're hoping we'll see them everywhere, and there's a chance that we may see them at every place that we're planning to see them, but we can't control that. So we're pretty sure we're going to see some because our timing looks to be really good. We're keeping an eye on the predictions. They actually have predictions in Japan of when the cherry blossoms are going to start. So we're keeping an eye on the predictions, and it looks pretty good. But here's a woodblock print, which obviously is, it's 18th century, so it's not, when hanami started, but even by the 18th century, so 1,000 years after people really began to look at cherry blossoms, it was still was and is today something that's an integral part of Japanese culture. People love to spend time outside viewing the cherry blossoms, and part of this has to do with the ephemerality of the cherry blossoms. It's such a short amount of time, a maximum of maybe 2 weeks that the blossoms are on the tree. And some people would say, that some people love it when the trees are full, and other people say the most beautiful moment is when they begin to fall, because that really connects us to this idea of the transience of life, the ephemerality of all living things, and this also, of course, ties back into Buddhism. But in this case, this is a happy outing, and you can see on the top, it's written, Mure kitaru, hana mata hana no, Asuka Yama. All flock together, blossoms upon blossoms, Asuka Hill. Right? So this idea of the blossoms in clusters flocking together, almost like birds would flock together, right, on the hill. And these women enjoying their time outside under the cherry blossoms and enjoying a meal with it. And eating has become such an important part of hanami. And there's even a saying, hana yori dango. This gets translated into dumplings rather than flowers, but dango actually are not dumplings the way we think of dumplings. They're what you see here, which are made of glutinous rice. It's pounded, it's sticky rice, and then with spring colors, right? And so those are dango. But it's not that you have to eat dango when you are cherry blossom viewing, but it's the idea that a lot of people do enjoy cherry blossom viewing because it's a moment to get together and share food with their friends. And so this image here is very typical of what we will see in cherry blossom viewing, which is we will not be alone, and there will be lots of blue tarps, and we will have our own blue tarps, and we'll be sitting on the ground enjoying the cherry blossoms and sharing some food together. There are a few places along the way where this will be how we'll enjoy the cherry blossoms. And so under the cherry trees, the salad, fish and all, seasoned with petals. The image on the left is kind of typically what people bring for their cherry blossom viewing parties these days, which is food that you can buy at the supermarket, pre-prepared food. And because we won't have access to a kitchen to make you food, unfortunately, we'll be buying lunch boxes that we can eat as we're doing our cherry blossoms. We'll have them delivered. Kuma says. Probably in some cases by Kuma.
By Kuma.
Yes, that has happened in the past, it's true. If the weather is inclement, we will, and I encourage you all to bring an umbrella, folding umbrella, we will enjoy a walk viewing the cherry blossoms in the rain, and then we will retire to our bus and eat our lunch there. But hopefully we will have good weather. The weather at the end of March, early April typically is pretty good, but in Japan, rain is always a possibility, so we will be prepared for that. So I think this would be a good moment to move to the packets.
Okay.
Sandra, you wanna take
You want me
over?
to kind of introduce it and then I'll let
Would
you,
you like to?
yeah.
Sure.
Like Mimi learned, but
So Mimi will go over most of the packet, but just so I can go over two of the items. On the left side, you should have these two. One's a packet and then one's just a one-pager. The one-pager is your insurance card, so you'll want to bring this with you. There is a note to make for those taking the extension. I didn't put the dates of the extension in there, so I am working with insurance to change that, so you'll get a new card in your email, because it only goes to the end of the actual trip before the extension. So if you're on the extension, you can expect to, I've already reached out to them, they'll change it. I just made that little error. So if you got that today and wondered why it only said to the second for those on the extension, you'll be insured for the whole trip. The second thing is this packet, which is our liability form. If you want to take time to read it, that's fine, but you'll take that time later if you do need to read it thoroughly. But this is just a typical liability form. You'll want to print your name at the top here, and then at the bottom of the second page you'll sign, and it just is assumption of risk and then consent to treatment if something were to happen to you. And then on that note, a lot of people had questions about the coronavirus and what our insurance covers. I spoke with the insurance provider today, and they told me evacuation for coronavirus is not covered through the insurance, but treatment would be if for some reason that would happen on the trip, which we don't anticipate. You would be covered seeking treatment for it, but the evacuation is not covered.
What about 14 days of incubation?
Yeah, what about,
So
yeah.
any
Isolation?
Yeah, any treatment like that that's associated with the treatment, which the
But what
incubation.
about travel complications because of something like quarantine?
So if there's
Like delayed
delays,
flights or canceled flights, like we're going on to South Korea afterwards. So if we
Yeah.
get delayed for quarantine and, you know, in Japan,
so
we can't go on to
unfortunately it's
South
not
Korea.
covered in that. So any fees associated with that you would have to take on yourself.
There may be other
supplemental
travel.
travel insurance.
Yeah.
There is, yeah, if you wanna look into that.
So on the first page it says see attached confirmation of coverage, where is that?
So that's in your email, so you should have received an
okay.
email today. It is
Yeah.
quite a lengthy packet, so we didn't print it, but all that information should be in your email. If you don't see it, it could be in your junk mail. If you don't find it there, let me know and I have access to those packets, so I can send it to you again.
I got it.
and the consent form, insurance.
This afternoon.
To ignore that.
So,
Oh yeah, so on here it asks at the bottom to put your insurance ID, this is the university form that they require us to use. We obviously are providing the insurance, so you don't have to provide any ID number, we keep that on file, the one we've purchased for you, so you can ignore that part.
So what happens in the event that the trip gets canceled because of coronavirus?
Krista, would you like to?
Well, at
If-
this point, so we're not canceling the trip simply because it's not on the State Department list.
Right, but it could,
Yeah.
and so that's what I'm
If
asking.
it is, we would try to recoup as much as we can and do the ethical right thing and reimburse the group accordingly.
So
But-
unless it's, red on the State Department, we're going.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, we're keeping an eye on things very closely.
right.
And at this point, we're more likely to contract influenza.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I get it. I'm an
But-
epidemiologist, I get it.
Oh, good.
I know that,
Good.
except that, you know, a lot of flights are canceling going into China until April.
Right.
So, you know, we're
Yeah.
really at a point where we don't know how much it's gonna spread, and I believe Japan would be, you know, really conscientious about it.
Right.
But it's like issues of getting back into the country, into the US. after having been.
Right.
It's the bigger issue than actually going there and having your trip.
I think currently out of any of the countries out there, from what I gathered, and I just came back from Cuba, so I had about like a day and a half to just like wrap my brain around it. Japan seems to be one of the safe bets in terms of where they are right now, and there's never a safe bet in any of this. But I also know, culturally speaking, that Japan is one of those more cautious countries that are really out there in the world. So
And we're not on a cruise ship.
Yeah,
Right.
they're not letting the cruise ship people in.
Yeah.
I agree.
So
And we're
I-
planning on, Kuma and I are planning on bringing a lot of surgical masks,
Yeah,
so that
yes.
we'll have plenty for everybody, and a big thing of hand sanitizer for on the bus.
But I've learned hand sanitizer doesn't kill the coronavirus. You need 70% ethanol, which you can buy little things. So unless the hand sanitizer, at least 70% ethanol, if not 90%.
Okay,
So that's
very
not
good.
all hand
Very good.
sanitizers, yeah.
Was it you who sent me, someone in the group sent me information, I can pass it along on the best ways to prevent coronavirus, so I'll pass that
Yeah,
on
there
to
you go, so
everyone.
that's fine. Mine is 70% ethanol.
Any other questions about the liability form or the insurance card? Alright, then I'll
Thanks,
leave the
Sandra.
rest to you.
Sure. So there are a number of things in here, and what I would like to do is actually kind of use my slides because it covers a lot of the same material and it has cherry blossoms on them. So, and start by talking a little bit about our route. So you have a sheet that on the front page has a list of all the hotels where we're staying. If you want to follow along with that, that will give us more information. And if you look at the second page of that packet, it starts the schedule. Now, when you look at the schedule, a lot of people get a little concerned because there are lots of times noted on it, and it looks like it's going to be really busy. And the only reason there are lots of times noted on it is because in Japan, everything runs promptly. And so I can put times on it and know pretty clearly that that's the time we're going to leave and move. Anything in parentheses means approximate, right? Because a lot of the times we'll actually be moving around by charter bus because much of this trip is off the beaten path. And that's one of the things I'm really looking forward to on this trip is to go some places. A few of these places Kuma has not been, I have not been. We know about them, we've been wanting to go, and so this is a good opportunity for us to go there. And but it's difficult to get there on public transportation in a prompt manner, so we're going to have a bus, and that also gives us flexibility for being a little early or a little late as we see fit. So we start off, as you all know, in the city of Fukuoka on the island of Kyushu. So what I'll do with the next few slides is you'll see this map of Japan will stay the same on the left side of the slide, and the dots will move as we kind of move through on the different days. So we start in Fukuoka. The photograph on the top is of a place that will go on the second night for those who want to, which is food stalls that are set up along the river in Fukuoka. It's one of the places that is really famous for this. And some of these food stalls serve really incredible food, mostly Japanese, but there's also one that does French food that's very famous. There's a whole range of things, and this is the kind of place where we will take you there and help you get settled, but you will be a little bit on your own, enjoying the company of probably Japanese neighbors sitting next to you, and this is an optional piece, but it's something that Fukuoka is very well known for, and is a lot of fun. The image on the bottom is of the castle in Karatsu at cherry blossom time, and that happens on the second day. So we start that happens on the second full day. We arrive in Fukuoka on the 20th. We'll spend time in different parts of the city. That day, we'll visit some ruins, the Zaifu government office ruins. These are 8th century ruins of an 8th century governmental complex. And we're interested in the archaeology, but we're also interested in the cherry blossoms that surround it. So that's a kind of twofer visit. And we'll also visit the very famous Dazaifu Tenmangu Shinto Shrine. And we'll have a nice traditional Japanese lunch, and then we'll go to a park called Mishi Park or West Park, which is also known for its cherry blossoms. And then we'll have a welcome dinner that evening. Every morning breakfast will be provided in the hotel, typically buffet breakfast with a whole range of options, Japanese and Western. I know some people have some dietary restrictions, and typically the hotels that we're staying at, it's not an issue. And we're carefully speaking with all the restaurants to make sure it's not an issue at any of the restaurants as well. But if anywhere along the way you have questions for us about what you are eating, when we sit down for meals, the first thing I do tends to be explain what everything is in front of you, because often there are many things in many small dishes, and some of them will look very new to you. And so I do my best to figure out what they are and explain them to you. So often I'm spending 5 minutes going around and saying, okay, now at 3 o'clock in that dish that's blue is, the konnyaku that comes from the root of the devil's tongue plant, things like that. But if you ever have questions about food, please don't hesitate to ask either one of us. March 22nd, Sunday, our second full day, we'll visit the Karatsu Castle, as you see on the bottom here. Karatsu is also known as a pottery town, and we will be joined by a local guide there. That's one place we have not spent time, so we're going to have a local guide that day who does not speak English, so I'll be doing a little interpretation for you. And the guide will lead us from the castle through the pottery workshops in the town, so that should be a lot of fun. And we'll return to the same hotel that night. The next day, starting Monday the 23rd, this is going to be a really fun day for us, because this is revisiting some places that near where we lived and worked in the years 1996 and 1997, so a few years ago. Onta is a tiny pottery town, very interesting way of preparing the clay, and I'm going to leave that as a little bit of surprise for you. So that's going to be a fun stop on our way to Kuju. Kuju, which is the image on the top, Kuju National Park, at the base of Kuju-san, which is an active volcano, and in the foreground of that is the Resonate Club Kuju Hotel. Kuma was the lead project architect on that hotel in 1993, and I carved all the door handles, which you will see, all 60 of them in 2 weeks.
Wow.
Yes, so this brings, and we actually, oh yes, before that we're going to stop and visit a microbrewery that I was the project architect for in 1996 and 1997. So these are projects by Tinzu Atelier Mobile, which is the firm that we work for. We were based in Tokyo, but we moved down to this area for a year because we had 3 projects under construction. So we lived there and worked on the construction sites every day. So it's going to be fun for us to go back there. It's a beautiful area, incredible views. You all live in Utah, you know about incredible views. It's a little bit unusual for Japan, so it's a lot of fun to be there. We're looking forward to going back. We actually held our Japanese wedding reception at this hotel where we'll be spending the night. So, we still know the manager, so it's been a few years, but yeah, so that's fun. And another thing at the hotel is there are hot springs, so you can enjoy hot spring baths while we're there. The next day, we'll go, from there we'll go to Yufuin, and Yufuin is a very famous hot spring town in Japan. And we're going to visit the Komiko Art Museum, which was designed just a few years ago by a very famous Japanese architect, Kengo Kuma. No relationship to this Kuma. Kengo Kuma. Kuma is his last name, actually, in this case. My students are always like, oh, you're married to Kengo Kuma? And I'm like, no. Wrong Kuma. Kengo Kuma does work all over the world now, but his buildings are beautiful. This museum should be quite interesting. It's contemporary art. This is where we'll see some of the work by Takashi Murakami, again, not Kuma's father, but the other Takashi Murakami, as well as a couple of other Japanese artists. And we'll have a short tour of that museum. and then there will be time to walk through downtown and have some lunch on your own, before we then go on to Beppu Jikoku Onsen, which really, Beppu's the name of the town, Jikoku means hell, onsen means hot spring, and these, you can see in this bottom image, these are called the pots from hell. So this kind of pots of boiling water. There's a red one, there's a blue one, there are ones that are just pots of mud that bubble up. We're not bathing in them, we're going to look at them, a little bit like you might see at Yellowstone. Very unusual in Japan. They do, however, here have some foot baths that we'll enjoy while we're there, an antidote to all the walking, Erica. So that will be fun. But this is a beautiful natural location as well. We'll end up that night in a hotel in the city of Beppu. And that evening we're going to have a very fun dinner of fugu. Fugu is blowfish. Anybody know about fugu?
So it's kind of a risk-taking exercise.
Yes, depending on where you eat it. We're eating it at a licensed establishment, so it will be perfectly safe. But the fish is poisonous if prepared incorrectly. It will be prepared correctly, I assure you. We have eaten it many times. We'll still here. Last summer we took my brother's oldest, who's 18, as his high school graduation present. We took him to Japan and we fed him fugu, and he's still around here. Live to tell the tale, yes. But it is kind of, there is a very slight risk involved, but not really. It's very safe. It's very safe. No one dies eating fugu in a restaurant. The only time people die eating fugu is when they prepare it themselves. So we'll be very safe. But it is considered a delicacy. Okay, then Wednesday, March 25th, we'll go first to the port of Saganoseki, and from there we will board a ferry to go over to the port of Misaki, and from there our bus will take us to Matsuyama. Matsuyama is also a castle town, and as you can see in this top image, there are cherry trees on the grounds of the castle, so we'll get to enjoy another castle and some more hanami, cherry blossom viewing, before we go on to Imabari, where we'll be spending the night. And at the hotel that we're staying in Imabari, it has a very large garden, and the garden was designed by Shunyo Masuno, who is the Zen priest garden designer that I do work on. So I think you'll really enjoy that garden. We'll tour the garden while we're there, and then you'll be on your own for dinner. There are several restaurants in the hotel as well as nearby, and we can, when you do have times when you're on your own for meals, we're happy to answer questions for you. We've put together in this package, you'll also find a list of things to do, probably at the end. Yes, there's a ideas for free time in Fukuoka, because some people are arriving a little bit early. And so there's ideas for free time, and then on the back side there are, or the next sheet is restaurants, specialty foods, restaurants near the hotel in Fukuoka. I've done the same thing on the next 2 pages for Kyoto. One thing I forgot to mention about Fukuoka is I'm going to do my best to meet everybody at the airport. You're all coming in at different times and different days. The idea is I will be there to meet you. I will put you in a taxi, and Kuma will be waiting at the hotel to meet you there. The trick is we don't yet quite have everybody's information about arrival times in Fukuoka, so we'll get that, and then I'll be able to tell you specifically. But there should be in here also the maps of the. Did those get printed, Sandra? The maps of the airport?
Maybe I missed it. I didn't see that in the email, but
we'll have that for you next week. I think I sent it.
I'll go double check.
Okay, it's possible I didn't, but I have it with me. But I put together some maps of the arrivals terminals, and I say that plural because some of you are arriving in the international terminal and some of you are arriving in the domestic terminal, and they are not adjacent to one another. So I'm going to be doing a little bit of busing back and forth between terminals, And once I know exactly what times your flights arrive, there may be one or two of you I ask to wait 15 minutes while I get there because I'm connecting with other people. But I'll do my best to find you, and the maps show the meeting point on them, so you'll have that as well. And then it's not a long distance from the airport to the hotel. And Kuma will be waiting at the taxi stand at the hotel to receive you and to pay the taxi drivers. So rest easy. Jody's laughing at me.
It'll be a handle. No, it's great.
I've done this a few times.
I arrived
So,
and I was like, "There's Mimi."
Yeah.
It was perfect.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
So let's see, where were we? Imabari. So the next day, then we're going to move from Matsuyama and Imabari on Shikoku Island, which you can see is this island here. We'll start on the island of Kyushu, Kuma's hometown. Kumamoto's like right about there. We won't be too far from it. We'll wave. Then we're moving to the island of Shikoku, and then we're moving to a small island. So if that dot went away, there's an island under that dot called Owaji Island. And so then we're going from Shikoku. Oh yeah, Mount Shide. So on the way to Owaji Island, we'll stop at Mount Chiode. And this is I'm very excited about this. I haven't been there, but as you can see, it looks absolutely gorgeous. So you get the ocean, you get these amazing Japanese style islands that look just like a Japanese garden, right? In the distance, and you're up on the mountain viewing the cherry blossoms. So this is one of those very special cherry blossom viewing places that we're going to be able to visit. So we will stop there on our way to Owaji Island. And then when we first get to Owaji, there's a very interesting area that's very famous for its whirlpools. And it's where the bay and the ocean meet. And so it forms these whirlpools, and we'll have a chance to view the whirlpools. And if you like seaweed, it's a very famous area for wakame seaweed, which you can get dried in sealed plastic packages that you can bring home with you if you wish. It's very easy to dehydrate. It's great in soup, or you can rehydrate it and have it in a salad. But we'll see the whirlpools, and then we'll go on. And we're staying at the Westin Owaji Island Hotel, which is part of a complex that was designed by the architect Tadao Ando, who's very famous for his kind of austere concrete buildings. And we'll be able to tour. There's a chapel that's associated with the hotel that we'll be able to tour. There's also something called Yume Butai, which is the sort of theater of dreams, but it's an outdoor terraced garden that's planted with flowers. That's also of his design, that has a water feature that moves all through it, and a lot of what I would call follies are out of concrete. So we'll get our fill of Tadao Ando's work in that stop. The next day we will move from Owaji to Kyoto. And Kyoto is a place that if you've never been to Japan before, you have to go to, because there's so many gardens in Kyoto that you could go to one every day for a year and not see them all. Now, we won't try to see them all. I have picked out the ones that I think are important for you to see. There is a good variety. One of the ones that is one of my favorites is shown here on the top at the Ryoanji Temple in the western part of Kyoto, and it's a Zen meditation garden. So it's raked gravel and landscape stones, and in this case there actually is one cherry tree too, which and I've never been there when the cherry tree's been in blossom, so I'm hopeful that our timing will be good for that. And this is a garden where you sit and you meditate on it. And when we're at these places, we'll talk more about the specific design of the gardens and the ways to view them. But Ryoanji is one that we will visit. We'll also visit we'll start in Kyoto, the Daitokuji Temple Complex, which is a huge Zen Buddhist temple complex in the north central part of Kyoto. It has about a dozen sub-temples. We won't visit all of them, but we'll visit a couple of them, and we'll actually have lunch at one of them. So we'll have this beautiful, I think we did this before, I know Eric has done this before, beautiful, completely vegetarian lunch because it's considered Buddhist monk food. Beautiful dishes in this very nice restaurant in one of the sub-temples. We'll also visit, that day, we'll visit Ryoanji, and we'll visit the temple that I would say is almost the polar opposite of this kind of austere Zen temple. That's King Kakuji, which is called the Golden Pavilion, and it features a pavilion in a lake that is covered with gold leaf, and it's really quite amazing. So we'll do those the first day, and then the second day in Kyoto, which is the 28th, we will be on the east side of the city, and we'll start at the Ginkakuji temple. Kinkakuji means gold pavilion. Ginkakuji means silver pavilion. It was done by the grandson of the person who built the golden pavilion. Ginkakuji is not covered with silver leaf, however. So that may have originally been the plan, but that never happened. But it's a beautiful temple and garden complex that we'll visit. We'll also do the Philosopher's Walk, which is along a canal that's lined with cherry trees, and it's named after named for a philosopher who used to spend his mornings walking and thinking along the canal. And we'll also visit Honen-in Temple, which is a little bit off the beaten path. So we won't be there with quite as many of our hundreds of friends as we will probably see at many of the other gardens during cherry blossom season. And then we will move from there on to the Kiyomizu Temple, which is set up on the hill, and you can view from the temple, view across to a pagoda, and then walk over to the pagoda and down, and then we'll move through some traditional shopping streets and down to a very, very famous cherry tree kind of at the bottom of the hill. And after that, there will be a decision to make for those of you who want some free time in Kyoto. There are lots of things to explore, and again, on the sheet that started out with things to do in Fukuoka, there's also a sheet, things to do in Kyoto, and places to eat and foods that you should try and things like that. For those who want to continue on with us, we'll go on to the Fushimi Inari Shrine, which is a Shinto shrine that has a series of thousands of red torii gates, and this is almost half of a torii gate, but there are thousands of torii gates that march on a hillside. It's really quite fantastic. So you can choose to do that and then have free time, or you can have more free time as you wish, and you'll be on your own for dinner that evening, so you can take as much time as you need. The next day we will be traveling not by bus, but by Shinkansen, by bullet train, which is a very fun way to travel in Japan. And we'll be going, we won't be on it very long, unfortunately, but we'll be on it for about an hour and a half. We'll go to the station of Shizuoka, and from there we will take a bus. And on our way to this building that's pictured here, which is the Mount Fuji World Heritage Center that was just finished a little bit less than 3 years ago by the architect Shigeru Ban. On our way there, we're going to stop at what's called a Michi no Eki. Michi is road, Eki is station, so they sort of a road station. These are all around Japan. They are local kind of service areas, but they sell local foods, often produce and other kinds of foods that you then take home and cook with, but they also serve a lot of prepared foods that are made from local ingredients. And so it's in English, when we say we're stopping at a service area, you think, okay, it's going to be Arby's or something like that. This is much better, and there are lots of different food options there. And so we'll be around to help you navigate that. But it's the Michi no Eki I think are really fun stops because you get to see a little bit of the local culture when you stop there. So we'll stop at one of those for lunch, and then we'll move on to see the Mount Fuji World Heritage Center. And if you notice in this photograph, in the very center is Mount Fuji, very small, but it's there. I don't know if I'm blocking the view. Am I blocking the view for people
No.
if I sit there? Okay, there's Mount Fuji. There's the reflection of Mount Fuji in the reflecting pond in the front. Mount Fuji is considered sacred for the Shinto faith, and so that's why you see a torii gate. We'll talk a lot more about torii gates being a symbol of a Shinto precinct. The kind of the initial entrance, the initial threshold from the kind of everyday world, the profane world, into the sacred world. So this is sort of a torii gate pointing toward the sacred mountain of Mount Fuji in the distance. And then you can see here what's very interesting about this photograph too. You get Mount Fuji and its reflection. You get Mount Fuji right here, the reflection of the building itself. So this building was designed with a kind of inverse of Mount Fuji. And it's a very interesting building that talks about the history of Mount Fuji in Japanese culture. It talks about the act of climbing Mount Fuji, which I did in my very first trip to Japan in 1989 as a graduate student. I climbed Mount Fuji. I have not done it since. Some people, like our former boss, would say, oh, you shouldn't climb Mount Fuji. It's a mountain for viewing, not a mountain for climbing. So that's a big kind of push and pull in Japan, because many people do climb Mount Fuji, many Japanese do. And I'll tell you, it was cold in July up there. Wow. But we will, hopefully, starting on Sunday the 29th, and also then on Monday the 30th, get some wonderful views of Mount Fuji from some different aspects, and this will be one of the first views that we have. We will then on the 30th, in the morning on March 30th, there's an option if you want to do something a little bit early to go to a park that's not far from our hotel and do some early morning cherry blossom viewing. Again, this is optional if you prefer to sleep in. The hotel that we're staying that night has a hot spring as well, so it's a place you can relax a little bit. So if you'd rather go to the hot spring in the morning, you're welcome to do that. If you want to come along with me and do a little more cherry blossom viewing, I welcome that. And then we will from there go on into Tokyo. And our first stop in Tokyo will be the park that's pictured on the top here, Inogashira Park. That is one of the most famous places in Tokyo for viewing cherry blossoms. So we will stop there on our way into the city, and then we will check into the hotel where we're staying in Tokyo. And then we will have a day together with the whole group in Tokyo, and we'll go to another, probably the most famous Hanami spot in Tokyo, which is in Ueno Park, and we'll view the cherry blossoms there, and then we'll go on from Ueno to the Asakusa area, and we'll see the new tourist information center that was designed by Kengo Kuma. So you will see at least 2 buildings by Kengo Kuma, and then we'll see the Sensoji Temple, which is a historic temple. And then from there we're going to go on to the Hamarikyu Gardens in traditional gardens, quite extensive in Tokyo, and also, of course, there happen to be some cherry trees there as well. And then there will be a little bit of free time before dinner, before our sayonara dinner, which is going to be in a boat that you see pictured here, and we're going to do a nighttime cherry blossom cruise as our final dinner. So that will be a nice way to wrap up our cherry blossom tour. The next day, many of you are leaving, but not many of you are continuing on with me, and we'll talk about that, or with us. We'll talk about that in a moment. But for those who are departing that day, based on your departure times, we'll determine the best time for you to take, in most cases, a bus that goes directly from the hotel to either airport. In one case, there's a party that's leaving that has a fairly early flight. So we'll get you on some trains instead. I can't remember offhand who that is, but someone has like a 9:30 a.m. flight.
Are there buses to Haneda Airport, as we're leaving out of the other airport in Tokyo? Not
Yeah, there's
really.
some, the top one is for Narita,
Oh, that's right.
and the bottom
Haneda.
one is for Haneda, yeah,
Thank you.
so they go to
Sorry.
both airports,
They go to
yeah.
Haneda.
And we'll make sure you get on the right one, yes. Okay, let me just do one more slide here and then I'll be happy to answer any questions. For those of you who are continuing on, there is also in your packet another schedule which shows the Tokyo extension. And the first page shows some ideas for free times and meals in Tokyo, because you will have most of the day of April 1st free, while Kuma and I are putting people on buses and things like that. But we will get together for dinner tonight, dinner that night as a group. And that will be the kind of kickoff for our time together in Tokyo. On the 2nd, Thursday the 2nd, I know that says Tuesday on your, I caught that earlier today but not in time to send it. So it's Thursday the 2nd. We'll be doing some sightseeing of different areas within the city of Tokyo. Tokyo is a city of, in the city proper, there are 16 million people. In the greater metropolitan area, there are twice that, 32 million people. So it's a big city. It has many centers. It does not have a single center. The actual physical center of the city is where the Imperial Palace is, and the Imperial Palace and Imperial Palace grounds are not open to most of us. So it has, in a sense, a kind of empty center. A lot of greenery, which is wonderful to have those kinds of green lungs for the city, but you can't get to the center. So there, around the center, there are many other centers, sort of financial centers, business centers, commercial centers. So we'll start by visiting Shinjuku, which is one of those centers, and we're going to visit the Tokyo City Hall building. We'll go up to the observatory on the 45th floor and hopefully get a very nice view over that area of the city. We'll see a contemporary Buddhist temple. I can guarantee it will look like no other temple that you've seen. And we'll also have a stroll through Shinjuku Gyoen, which is a national garden right in the center of Tokyo. And that also, not surprisingly, has cherry trees as well. From there, we'll tour the Omotesando area. We'll visit the Meiji Shrine. We'll visit Omotesando, which is known as the kind of the Champs-Élysées of Tokyo. A lot of fashion houses have their headquarters there. It's lined with Zelkova trees. It's a fun street to walk down. From there, this will be a very busy day where we'll be moving, and we're doing this by public transportation, so it'll be fun. We'll have some time on the subways. And we're very good at getting groups in and off of subways, so I can assure you, I do trips with students every other year, and I've done all total at least 25 trips to Japan with groups. So I have experience getting people on and off subways. We have a method. It works. So I've never lost adults. And I actually haven't really lost students. Only when they do things they're not supposed to do. They do things like they go and buy a Coke out of the vending machine when the train is coming, right? You know, they always catch up. That's why we have these. So you always know where we're going. You always know the route, right? And you can get there if you need to. But that won't be necessary in this case. But we're going to visit a few more spots in Tokyo that day. We'll end up in the Shibuya area at the Cerulean Tower Hotel, which has another garden by the Zen priest Shunyo Masuno that we'll see before having dinner there. Friday the 3rd, we're going to visit Nikko, which is outside of Tokyo as you see on the map, and it's the lower photograph. It's an amazing mausoleum to the Tokugawa shogun, and it's set up on a hillside, on a mountainside within this beautiful cedar forest, and it's really an incredible landscape and a lot of fun to visit, and very different than some of the Zen temples that we will have visited that are very austere. This one is very, very ornamented. Lots of gold leaf, lots of color, so it's fun. And then we'll be back for our final full day on Saturday, April 4th, and we'll be visiting some of the museums in the Ueno area. We'll go to the Ginza area, which is the top photograph on this slide, which is one of the commercial centers in Tokyo that also has very interesting contemporary architecture. And then we will have our final dinner in the Zipangu restaurant in the hotel, which is designed by Super Potato, which is a great name. And then the 5th. The 5th of April is the departure day for those. I know not everybody's departing that day, but that's the departure day. And again, we'll work with you all to make sure that you get on the proper buses to the proper airports. Okay, questions about schedule? I know that was a lot and a lot of detail and a lot to go over. Does anybody have any questions?
I had 2 questions.
Sure.
One is, how many hotels are there gonna be onsens in?
Okay, let's see. Resonate Club Kuju, Beppu, onsen.
Oh, is that,
Beppu,
yeah.
Beppu.
Can we go by the dates? Because
Yes.
it's on my schedule.
So the 23rd,
Sorry.
Monday the
Oh,
23rd at Resonate Club Kuju. Tuesday the 24th at the Nishitetsu Resort in Beppu. And then the 29th of March, Sunday the 29th, at the Fuji Onsen Resort.
Okay.
So 3.
Thank you. And then the second one is, how much money do you recommend changing for the trip? Or at least to start
Yeah,
with.
that's a tricky one because well, first of all, Japan tends to be a cash economy, which is something that we'll go over. So credit cards don't work everywhere. Now they work at it is much better than it used to be, and they work at department stores and they work at major hotels and they work at most large restaurants, but they don't work at small restaurants and they don't always work at small shops. So the changing money is tricky because it depends a bit on how much shopping you're planning to do, whether when you have meals on your own, whether you're going to be very full from the meals we have together, which tend to be large because we tend to do a set menu as a group. And you might want something small, or you might want to splurge and go to a Michelin-starred restaurant, right? In which case would take a credit card.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but there will be ATMs.
Yeah. There will be ATMs. Some of the time we're a little bit out of the way.
Yeah.
Like when we're on Awaji, they probably have something in the hotel, but
But
because
what
it's a
would
major
you
hotel.
recommend we start with? Because you're
Okay.
saying to change money at the airport,
At the airport,
right?
yes. I would
So that's the
start.
starting point.
I would start by changing about $300 in cash.
Per person, right?
Per person, maybe for a couple, 500 for the couple.
But the airport would have the ATM.
Yeah, the airport has an ATM. They also have bank counters,
Yeah.
and the rates at the bank counters at the airport are the same as the rates in the city, so they don't try to stiff you at the
You don't
airport.
have to shop around.
There are ATMs.
It's all the same.
The best place to use your ATM card is actually a 7-Eleven. Not all convenience store ATMs work on all cards, but 7-Eleven tends to work with US cards. Remember that your cards will have a limit, typically $200 or $300 worth a day. So just keep that in mind. I also recommend, if you're not a frequent traveler, that you let your credit card company or your bank know that you're traveling, so that they don't try to contact you and tell you that you need to do all kinds of things to access your money or decline you. Yes.
You can get yen, I think, any day at Zion's Bank on Main Street.
Great.
And if you're not, I think it's free if you have a Zion account. If you don't, I think it's $10.
Okay, that's
Wells
great.
Fargo by the U usually is a pretty good one.
They have yen too.
Yeah.
The other thing, while we're just thinking about tips, what I learned when we were in Tokyo is that 7-Elevens have free Wi-Fi. So you can stand in front of the 7-Elevens and
Free
get the
Wi-Fi.
7-Elevens are everywhere.
7-Elevens are everywhere.
If you need to
It's
get on
true.
Wi-Fi.
It's true.
Yeah.
We will also be carrying a MiFi, which is a portable Wi-Fi device. So we will not allow 24 people to access it at once. But if you're in a spot and you need Wi-Fi and you don't have it, please let us know, because we will have constant.
I ordered one of those too.
Did you?
for
Yeah.
the time, yeah.
Yeah, they're great. actually.
Cause we're getting a rail pass for the first week before this starts,
Mhm.
and they offered that.
Oh,
The
wonderful.
rail pass people offered the Wi-Fi gadget.
Yes, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you can keep it the whole time.
You just sign up for as many days as you'll be there,
Great.
and then you return it at the airport.
Great. Yeah. Yeah, we're picking ours up at the airport and
I think
returning
you
it
can also
there.
get it at
And
the
cell
airport.
coverage is fine.
You can rent
Cell
it.
coverage
I prepaid
is
for
pretty
it.
That's what Sandy
good.
did.
For her daughter.
Make sure that you're on a special plan.
Yeah, T-Mobile is just free.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. There will be some places where you probably will not have service, especially because we're going to be up in the mountains a bit,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But
But at the hotel. they
but at the
have
hotel,
that,
yes,
yeah.
and the hotels will all have Wi-Fi as well. Yes. Other questions?
I had one.
Yes.
My daughters are coming to Tokyo, so they'll be there that one day when we arrive and going to Ueno Park.
Mm-hmm.
If they just tag along for the morning,
Let me see what, that should be fine.
not for the lunch, not for the boat
morning?
thing.
Yeah, if they wanna
Yeah.
come and hang out
No.
and look at cherry blossoms.
Yes,
that's
look
fine.
at
Yes.
cherry.
Yes.
That'd be great.
We'll make room on our blue tarp. Actually, we probably won't be blue tarping it in Ueno Park because everybody gets there like the night before and holds their spots. It's crazy. and Kuma does a lot, but he doesn't do that.
It's like, no, I'm not sleeping in the park. Draw the line.
Other questions?
So Super Potato used to be on the 30th and it got moved to the 4th?
So it's me. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We.
I misrepresented.
Yes.
That's okay.
I didn't pay attention to it.
That's okay.
Yes, we added free time on the 30th, and then we added the boat. The boat. Yes.
Okay, that's fine.
Yes. When we realized that we could do cherry blossom viewing from the boat, then we thought that was more appropriate. Yes. But the restaurant's in the hotel.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah. It's very
So we can
accessible.
still see it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. How are we doing for time?
And 6:49.
Oh.
Do you have, can we get this in a file?
Yes. Sandra could
Sorry,
send that
what
out.
was
We
it?
can
You
send
send
out
this in a
PDFs.
file?
Yeah.
In an electronic.
Yeah, thank
course.
you.
Well, all of them actually, because.
Probably
So-
all of them.
I add stuff in everywhere I can.
So next week I'll go over some of the preparations, just the packing list and things like that. I'll talk a little bit about etiquette, and some of this is in your packet already, so you can review it and how to wash before you take your hot spring bath, right? Very important, and how to take off your shoes in certain places. We'll go over some of those things, and we'll also go over a few words that will be that are on the little cards that you can put in your wallet that may be helpful as we're traveling. But I'm only going to require you really to remember a couple of words. And Jody knows the most important one.
Sumimasen.
Sumimasen. But sumimasen,
Sorry.
which means I'm sorry, excuse me, thank you.
Everything.
Please forgive me for all my wrongdoing, right? It's a very good word. Yes. Thank you, everyone.
On this, thank you.
All right.
Wow.